Good morning, folks. Hope you're all well and happy today. You won't believe this, but the sun's shining. How good is that? Anyway, nice sunny day here in Coffs today, so everybody's going to be happy, and there'll be lots of people around, I suppose. But anyway, today's show. What we're going to do today is going to focus on the front of the drawers. Now, we call them false fronts because we haven't made the drawer with blind dovetails. And so what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the fronts of the drawers, and I'm going to do a bit of embellishing. So I'm going to show you some ways of doing things. Now, it's not the only ways. There are lots of different ideas on how to do them, but I'll give you a couple of ideas anyway during the process. So when you open a drawer, often you'll find that when you look down here with a blind dovetail, you're able to see the dovetails on them. Now, that's fine on very high quality furniture nowadays, but timber's very, very expensive nowadays. So what quite a number of cabinet makers are doing are actually making the drawers out of a lighter timber, something that matches up to the cabinet they're building, but a lesser timber or a cheaper timber, you might say, and then they're adding on the front of it, they're adding on the timber that the cabinet's made from. That way you get that visual effect of what the cabinet looks like, but when you open it up, you've got some nice timbers in there. You know, they rarely go to rubbishy types of timbers, but nicer timbers, just something a little less expensive. And it brings the cost down on your cabinetry anyway. That's what we're calling a false front. Now, often you'll see with this one here, I've got an overhang. Often you'll see that they're squared off so that when you do open it, you've got a square end of it, and it looks like a blind dovetail. So what we're going to do is we're going to put false fronts on. This little cabinet has just very, very plain ones. I'll put it over here close where Pam can get some visuals on it. You can see it's very, very plain, just with brass knobs, nothing extravagant about it. It's only got 4 drawers. It's the first one I built when I first started making this cabinet. As you can see, the dovetails still show on the cabinet, and when you open the drawer, you can actually see the dovetails on the inside of the drawer. So that was the idea, was to be able to have a combination of different dovetails around the place. These dovetails here were done with the H10 or the H20, and the cabinet ones here are done with the A10. So that's the idea, and that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to have a little play with that today and get them all set up. Now, setting up the drawers and making sure they all fit in the right place is one thing. Getting them to open and close so they don't actually catch on anything is another. So we're going to go through a little bit of that detail, and we'll sort that out so we get it all looking pretty nice. So our first thing is to cut some cabinets, cut some drawer fronts. So let's go and put this away. I'll put this back over here. Now, this is our cabinet so far. We have all the drawers fitted, and to get them in and out, as I said to you last week, just put a screw in one of the holes there. These are the pre-drilled holes for the screws that are going to hold the fronts on. So I used them to I just put a big screw in there just to hold it so I can get them out again. So what we need to do is we need to get the front of that covered, and we're going to screw a piece of material on there. So I'll just put that back in there. What I want to do is I want to make sure that my drawers fit in there really snugly, that we don't want them to be gaps or anything between each of the drawers. We want it nice and snug so that we've got something to adjust. The other thing that I'm going to do, and I'll just lay this down this is my piece of material. It's a piece of 8mm cedar. It's the same as the outside of the cabinet. And what I want to do is I'm just going to cut myself my drawers off that. So I'll have to cut 2 pieces of this. And I'm going to cut it so that it overlaps on both ends, which gives me room for adjustment. Okay, so I want to have a little play with that. We'll get that first, and I'll cut those. So my measurement for that, just grab my ruler. So my measurement across the cabinet is 20 centimetres, so 200 mil. So my drawers are going to be 200 mil. So I'm just going to add another 10mm to that, so make it 210. And that gives me 5 mil either side. I need a pencil. Normally what I would try to do is I'd try to make sure that my piece of material was the same height as that, but this is not going to happen. So I'm just going to cut those off like so. So over to the drop saw. First thing I need to do is just make sure everything is square. So that doesn't look very square to me. So I'm just going to take a light cut off there. That looks a whole lot better. Recheck my measurement. All good. Just bring my fence up to that. Lock my fence in. Now I'm going to need 2 pieces, so I'll cut myself a second piece. Now the next task is to make sure that I've got a flush straight edge along the edge, so it's a matter of just turning it on its side like so and just trimming off a tiny little bit. Now I've got plenty of material there, so I'm not going to run out. I could do that. I could do that with a plane, but it's just as easy to do it with the saw. Now that will give me a straight edge to work with. Okay, so I've got 2 straight edges there. And when I put the 2 pieces down, what we can see is you can see that my grain continues all the way down through, except for this little bit on the bottom here. So if I just turn that around and put those 2 pieces together, it almost looks book matched. Okay, so all I need to do now is just work my way down and cut myself pieces off there. So I can do that. I don't need to because the grain is nice and straight all the way along. Okay, so it's just a matter of working out what you wanted to see on the front of the drawers. So we go from there. So our next step is to work out our measurements. So on our measurements, how we're going to do this, for the drawer fronts, the drawers themselves, the bottom one goes from the bottom edge of the top edge of the bottom platform to the center of the first shelf, and then that goes from center to center all the way up the thing till it gets to the top one, which goes from center to there, to the top edge of that. So if we measure that, to the middle is 50 millimetres. Just get myself a piece of paper, something to draw on. There we go. So write these measurements on something. So my top one is 50 mil. And then from centre to centre, now each of those shelves are 10 millimetres. So if I find my centre, from there to there is also 50 mil. So my two top shelves are going to be the top fronts are going to be the same size. And then I'll measure this, the next one, I get 10 millimetres again. And my measurement from there to there is, just got to make sure I get that right, is 56 millimetres. Okay, so the next one is a little bit bigger. Let's do the next one. .61 millimetres for the third one, the fourth one. And the bottom one is going to be 84 millimetres. Now you might say that's a whole lot of odd looking measurements, but you've got to remember that I'm doing this by eye. I haven't got a plan drawn up or anything like that. Somebody has asked me for plans, but I'm in the process of actually building a cutting list for this job, but I haven't got a definite plan. It's all come out of my head, and therefore all your measurements are quite good there. Like, that's why they're all a little bit odd. So shift that out of the way. And now my first measurement. Remember, we're going to cut these off the board. Actually, I don't even like that front bit. I might turn that over. See what this one looks like turned over. Actually, that side looks a whole lot better. I think I might use that side. You can see I've got wide grain from here that goes all the way down to there. Then the grain closes up over here, and then it opens out again down the bottom again, which doesn't look too bad. So we'll go with that. That looks quite nice. I got a tick of approval from Pammy, so we're going to go with that. So I'll go as far as I can down. I'm going to have a little bit left over, so I'll probably end up with the tight grain at the bottom of the cabinet, and we have the light grain at the top. So my first measurement is 50 mil. So my first and my second one are 50 mil. Now I try to make sure that I put the fence up every time. It just gives me that little bit of security. I don't have to. I could just cut it if I wish to, but just that little bit of security, it just gives you that help. So ears on, everybody. So that's number one. Put a 1 on there. Number 2 is the next one, so it's going to be 50 as well. And then my next one is 56. Just fits on there. Shift my fence along a little bit. It doesn't matter if you cut these a little wider than you need, because we're going to trim them up anyway. 1, 2, number 2, number 3. And my next one after that was, I think it was that way, yep, 61. Clamp's going to play silly. Okay, so we go to 61. Okay, and the last one is 84.
Does it make it?
Yeah, just. I've got a tiny little bit left over, which was quite good. So as you can see, the laser on these Festool Capex saws are really good. And there's number 5. So we can go back over to the desk. Take my piece of paper. We may need to come back to the saw to do a little trimming. So a little bit of sandpaper here. Take off. Cedar is notorious for being a little bit furry when you cut it, even when you've got a nice sharp blade on your saw. So there's one. You can see on the end of here that we have a little fault. Luckily it's just inside the 5 mil, so we'll be able to get rid of it. If you find you don't like the look of those little things, so then now it's looking like it's all falling into place. And I can see that I've cut them a little bit wider than I should, because I'm right at the bottom of this shelf here, and I need to, this one's not going to fit in. So as you can see, it doesn't fit, right? Which is fine. So what I need to do now is I need to adjust them so that they fit. So, and this is how we adjust them. I'm going to do the bottom one first. So I want the bottom one to fit. Oh, there's a piece of sawdust on there. So that one's going to go there. So that actually fits. That's in the middle. You can see just here. You can see there's my mark that I put on it earlier, and we're in the center of the shelf. All right. So my next one has to be sitting on top of that and the center of the shelf here. So my mark is there. I need to take off nothing at all. That one fits as well. Okay, so it must have been one of the top ones that I cut wrong. So my next one, this one's a bit wider. Yeah, a little bit wider than I need. So I need to take a little bit off that. So if I just mark it just there, I'll just go back to my saw. So just again, bring the fence up. Always best to err on the side of support. I don't know why that one's wrong, it's a millimetre out. Back over to the bench. No, not enough. I've got to take another little bit off. So back to the saw.
So tiny.
Yeah, it is. Just a tiny little bit. Get it this time. I could have set up the my plane and just planed a little bit off. It would have made life a whole lot easier. That's better now we got it. So that one goes on. And you can see how the grain is starting to sort of just continues down through the top of the box. Okay, so this one's a bit too wide as well. Yeah, I think I've got to do both of these, and they're just both a tiny little bit more. So that one only needs a tiny bit, a bee's knee. So that one's got to come off there. Back to here. Oh, we're looking so good now. And that one just doesn't quite fit. So, just mark where I need it. Doesn't quite fit, it's a long way off. Look at that. Perfect. And you can see that's nice and tight. And so there's the front of the cabinet. It's all the drawers in. Now the reason they're nice and tight is because I want to do the fitting to the drawers themselves, and I can do a little bit of adjusting just by sanding between the joints. Okay, so it's not that hard to get that sorted. But before that, we're going to embellish it a tiny little bit. Now, I've done a little bit of practice, or had a little bit of a play. It always pays to play, to practice something before you're actually going to show people what you're doing. What I have here is I've got this box, which is the other box that I've been building. And you can see if you look in the top of it, I've got some little strips in it just to designate each of the drawers, right? Now getting those in there, they're just little inlays. So what you can see is there's nothing on the back, nothing on the edges once we cut it. Okay, so there'll be nothing showing on the edge. I'm going to have a little gap between the edge of the box or the edge of the drawer and the edge of my inlay. So I have to make that little inlay. Now those little inlays there, you can make them whatever size you like, whatever shape you like. So I'll just show you a couple. I'm going to get my whiteboard out. And draw some little pictures for you. Now, the ideas are yours. So draw whichever shape you like and have a look and just see what it looks like on a drawing. So I'm going to go to my top camera and I'll just show you what I mean. So the first thing to do, so I'm going to draw the top of the box. Now I'll do a number of them. So this is the top of my box. I've got drawers that are shaped like this. They're not the actual sizes, but anyway, that's what we have. We have the drawers. Now somewhere in here we're going to have a knob showing. Okay, so that will show up on pretty much all of your cabinets. You'll have the knob. Now you've seen on my other cabinet, I've got little brass knobs, and I showed you right at the beginning of the project, I showed you a project that had turned knobs on it. And we're going to turn some knobs for these projects, but we start with the visual things that happen on the box, and then we start to add the different things. Now I'm using a whiteboard and a whiteboard pencil, and the reason being is I can rub it out and I can start all over again without having too much of drama. Or if you want to keep your work, get yourself a book and start drawing your pages or drawing up pages where you've got all this information that you can refer to later. Now I've got the book in the cupboard there, but in the beginning, whiteboard. So what I have already is I have a white line all the way through here. And that shows up like that on the box. So with your whiteboard, grab a different colour to do those. I might just do them in red so that you can see. Just rub that out. My head's not in the way, is it? You can see what I'm doing. And so we have that effect. That's one way. Another one could be this. And this is something I thought I might do with one of the other cabinets. Again, draw up your drawers. Get some sort of proportion into it. Okay, so we're going to have, and before I put the doorknob on it, I'm going to draw up what I was going to do. Now,
Your head's in the way.
oh, my head's in the way, gosh. Okay, so we can start with a wide one, and then another not so wide, and we can do that. Okay, so we've basically got a triangle leading down the box. Okay, so there's that idea. I see Pam pulling a face at that one. So, no. And then again, we have another one. And do a number of these. I'm going to stop here. This is the last one I'm going to do. With a little chevron or something inlay. And that's how I come up with my ideas. So as you can see, there's a whole lot of different things that we can do. So I'm going to show you how to do this one. We'll do that today. And the other one that I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a bead. I'll show you one of my little testers. We're going to show, I'll show you this one here, this little bead. You can see I've got a little bead on the drawer as well. Now, this is just a tester, so I'm not necessarily going to have both things on the drawer. I'll have that one or I'll have that one for these particular drawers, and I'll go through those and show you how to do them. Now, to do that, we need a couple of router bits. So these are the router bits that I've used there. Okay, they're called a drawing line two-fluted bit. All right. This one here is at what we call, if you're on the Carby Tool site or you've got a Carby Tool book, TDL3 B1/2 is that one, right? Now the diameter of the little bead is 5.5 millimeters. Right. This one is a little bigger, so it will give you a bigger curve. It's got a 7.1 millimeter bead on it. All right. So that means that the distance from the top of the bead to the bottom of the bead will be whatever that diameter is. Now this one here is the one I've used on there. So this is the 5 mil, and if you want to make a bigger one, well, by all means you can use the bigger router bit. TDL3, TDL4. Okay, so they are drawing line bits. That's what they're called. That's the category that they go under. So I'm going to use the smaller one, and I'm going to run across the top of a set of drawers. I might do it to this one, and then on the other cabinet I'll show you how I put in the inlay. Just get some of this stuff out of the way. I need that. That one belongs there. Get this out of the way. Okay. All right. Set up. Now, to make this, what I've done is I've cut some material down, and this is Jewellery. Now, it's not a common timber. It's one that carvers generally use. It's very light. It's easy to manipulate, and it's quite solid. And as you can see, the grain on it is really, really straight. All right. Didn't seem to have a lot of knots or anything like that. It's just a beautiful piece of timber, and carvers generally use this one. Now this piece is 1/8 of an inch thick. Okay, for those of you who are using metric, 3.2 I think it is 1/8, and we're going to recess it into here. So we need a 1/8 bit. My 1/8 bit, we have them in stock. TSRW4 is a Carby Tool router bit, 1/8 of an inch, and that's what we're going to use. So let's get set up for that. Now you'll need a fence, so I'm going to have to turn my table so that Pam can get a camera on it. So that looks about right. So I have a fence. Now what I've done is I could just put the router bit in there and just work straight off the router bit, but because I've got a gap in my fence, I've made a little sled. My sled gives me the correct measurement for what I want to do. Now if I can do it over and over again, I'm going to do it 5 times in a row. It means that I can put my piece of timber down and be confident that I have my trench in the right place every single time. So that's what we're going to do, use the trench. Now the trench is just a piece of cedar with some dovetails in it. Okay, so a really good way of testing things, and then I've just run the router bit through the bottom part. The reason I've got the top part there is to support the whole lot and to keep this stable when I'm working with it, right? And then I can just run my piece of timber along my fence like so. Okay, out a bit. Let's get that in there. I think what we might do is, I'm just rethinking this. I've got 25 minutes. It might be quicker to show you how to cut the bead on the top one first before I do the inlay, because the inlay is going to involve gluing. So let's do that instead. So change of plans, folks, change of plan. Still need the fence. And the beauty about the change of, the beauty about having 5 or 6 cabinets on the go at once, you can change the plans almost immediately. Well, let's hope you can. Okay, so again, make sure you test your setup. Now I've tested it and I know exactly where I need to have my height. Just right there. I'm just using that as a testing system. Slide my, you might have to bring it around this way a bit. Across here. And all I'm going to do is adjust my fence to the right depth. So I've got my right depth cut. I need this. Now this is a quick operation, so it doesn't take that long. So ears on, everybody. And this is what they're going to look like. And as you can see, just by adding that little feature, it's changed the whole look of the box. Just by adding that, it's created a shadow. You've got a little bead on it that's at the top edge of all the boxes. If you don't want it at the top, turn them over, put them at the bottom. So there's lots of different ideas that you can do with that. And that TDL3 gives you a 5mm, which fits nicely with the proportions that you have on the front of the boxes. Okay, so that's that one. So let's go on to the other harder one. So as you can see, very quick, doesn't take all that long. We'll go on to the harder one. Does that work for you, folks? That's that sawdust issue that's happening. I shouldn't have taken that off. Gosh, not thinking straight. Don't need that one. As I said, 1/8 bit. Needed my collet reducer for that. Now, what we're going to do here okay, so this is the top edge on this side, and that's the front of the box. So we're going to do the top edge. What I want to do is just adjust the height so that we're only just, if you look here, you can see it's way too deep. We don't want that much. I only want a very small amount of material in the trench. So we're going to cut, some people will call it a dado, I call it a trench, and I only got to cut it quite shallow. Don't want it very deep at all. So sitting it on there, you can see I'm above my sled, and I'm just into it. Now I've guessed it. I haven't sort of said, you know, it has to be 2 millimeters, 3 millimeters, or anything like that. It just has to be deep enough, because I've got plenty of material that I can use, and all I need to do is cut pieces off it. So there's plenty there to play with. So if I bring this over, just want to make sure my sled is going to move freely. That's going to move freely. Lock that in. And what I'll do is I'm going to put my piece of timber on there, and I'll just drop it straight on top of there. And then I've got something to move the whole piece in one go, rather than trying to sit that on there and then slide it back and forth. This is a little bit more protective. All right. Now, what I need to do is I need to have a stop both ends, because as you can see, that piece of timber is not as big as the trench. As big as the sled, so we have to have a stopping point and a starting point. All right. Now, stopping and starting. The width of my cabinet, 200 mil. Okay, so when you measure it, 200 millimeters. How far in do we want the edges of the inlay? So do we want it right close to the edge? We want it further away? We want a short one, a long one? You have to work out how wide you want that to be, right? So if I've got 200 millimeters and I bring my little rebate in 10 millimeters either side, it means that I've got a 180 millimeter piece of material going onto there. Actually, I don't think that's 180. I might even make it less than that. Let's make it, that 180 seems to be a bit wide. So if I do this, I just have a little bit of a think about it, say 170 maybe. I've already got the piece of material cut, so I should just measure that, which is 170. Beautiful. Okay. So this is how I find all my pieces of material are exactly the same size, cut them all at the same. So 210, so that's 105. Now, 170, what's half of 170? 165. That's not right. Try 85. Put a mark here and a mark there, 170. And I'm only going to do that on one piece because I'm going, once I set it up, and I've got my two marks. So this is how I set up. Shift this out of the way now. You can tell I didn't get very far with maths at school. Sitting in there in the right place. And I've lined up with the outside edge of the router bit on my mark. So I need it. Stop. Oh, it moved. That's one. And that's two. Can you come around and come in from here? Okay. So now all I need to do, that was the top edge. So that gets flipped over like that. And I will turn it on and just drop that straight on top of there and then run the whole thing through. Makes it nice and easy. Okay, so ears on everybody. What's happened?
From Brian Luckins had a question for you.
Which was? Just let me have a little read, folks.
Have the drawer fronts been cut to the finished length?
No. Brian, the drawer fronts are not cut to the length at the moment. What I try to do is I try to do a lot of the work beforehand, and then I can trim it up and fit it as we go. So it's just a good idea. We'll get them cut to length shortly. Now, not shortly, but one of the next projects we're going to do, parts we're going to do, we're not going to get it done today, but as you can see, these are all going to fit in here nicely. By not cutting them to length, it gives you room to manipulate things and to change things around a little bit. So as you can see, it's going to look quite nice once I've got all of the little bits of inlay in them. Okay, so it's just a small thing to do it that way. So the inlay, as I said to you before, this is not quite fitted. So what we have to do is I have to fit these bits in here. So they're just a tiny little bit longer than I actually need. I need to get a little piece of sandpaper and just, you can see even that's a brand spanking new router bit, and you can see what it does to cedar. You can see it's really furry in there. So if I just clean that out, you can see I have a nice little trench there. So it's quite a neat little trench, and that piece of material is just the right size. Cut it a little bit longer so it gives you room to adjust things. Just clean those out. Is that the only question that we had? That looks really nice. Really pleased with the way that's come up. So now it's just a matter of cutting the bits and pieces. So we'll go over to the drop saw and I'll cut the bits to fit that. Now, it's a good idea to get your material almost the right size. Take another piece of sandpaper. Let's go over to the drop saw. And put that there where you can see it. Take this away. Just give this a brush down. Now all I'm going to do here is cut a sliver off here. Okay, so it's 1/8. I just want to cut the tiniest bit off. I'll have to cut another one. The saw flicked that one away. Try that again. That one got flicked away as well. It didn't do it when I did it the first time. Having a problem here, folks. I think I've got something happening in my blade. There is another way around it. Let's cut it with a saw. Try that one more time, just see if it works. We've got time to get one cut. That one worked. And so we end up with a very tiny little piece of inlay material. Okay, so if you look at here, you can see that we've got rounded over edges. So I'm going to round the edges over, and that will fit in there like that. Nice and neat. Just round the end over, and maybe the sandpaper. Do the same on the other end. Okay, it's a tiny bit too long, so I'll just take a little bit more off. Squeeze that in. Just got a little bit more off it. Okay, so that's going to fit in there nicely. So I'm just going to glue that in. I'll show you how I glue it in. I'll get some glue and a couple of little clamps. So just talk amongst yourself while I get this stuff sorted. Should have done it earlier. You don't need much glue for this. So as you can see, I've only got a tiny little bit on the rag. Wipe the excess off before you actually glue it all in. Okay, so that's just a little proud. And what I'm going to do is then I'll put my little clamps on. A little bit fiddly.
Those baby clamps have become very useful, haven't they?
Yes, they have. These little Bessie clamps, I actually bought them by mistake. But I've found that they are very, very useful. Particularly for small work like this. And they hang on very nicely. So when you can operate them. There we go. So what we have is we have that nicely clamped in place now. And once that dries, I'll take the clamps off it and we'll get it sand the front off it, or plane the front off it, and make that fit. So back to the bench, and we'll go from there. So just want to pull all this apart because I've done all my cutting, and I think it's about time we had to go as well. So what I will do during the week is I will finish those off, and next week we'll fit the drawers. I'll fit the fronts on the drawers. I'll have them all sanded up. It's always a good idea to make sure everything is sanded before you actually put it together, and then we'll glue and screw all the bits and pieces together. So we'll do that next week, and so I think we'll end it there today. Just put my bench back, and we will continue with it next week. So we got through a fair bit today. Now I hope you got something out of it, because I'm constantly asked questions about how do I finish this? How do I get that result? How do I do this? How do I do that? As you can see, a lot of the ideas that I come up with, I've always drawn them up on a piece of paper or the whiteboard and so forth. So use your imagination and draw up some stuff, and you will come up with some ideas that, well, sometimes you like them, other people might like them, sometimes you don't like them. So it just means changing things. So just have a little think about what you're doing, and you know, you can always come up with something nice. So that's it for today. I would get everything sorted out so that we're fitting next week, and then we're going to go into doing some finishing and get the boxes actually working properly. So I might even actually have a little play at turning some knobs for it, and we'll see how that goes as well. So I need to set that up, and we'll get that sorted. So anyhow, that'll be it for today. Please have a good week, and I will see you all next week. Now, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. It helps us in the end, and a couple of thumbs ups wouldn't hurt as well. So if you subscribe to the channel, you'll get a notification half an hour before we start the show, and you can continue. And as you can see, we have a bit of a chat going on there. I don't generally answer it, but you know, occasionally there's a question there that has to be answered. So if you want a question answered, email me and I can answer the question on the next show. Okay, so have a good one, everybody. Dave's up right now, so I flick over to say good day to him, and I will see you all next week.